Welcome to Season 3 of Voices of Value, where Rik Rushton and Peter Kakos continue their conversations with high-achieving guests who share their personal stories and, more importantly, the lessons they've learned from their journey. Whether it's Olympians sharing the roadmap that took them to a gold medal, professional sports people taking you inside their mindset, business leaders revealing their success strategies, or everyday people sharing life hacks, you can be sure you'll find value simply by joining the discussion with your hosts, Peter and Rik.
Voices of Value, Rik Rushton here with my good friend Peter Kakos on a very important topic, Pete, for what will be a great episode. And we've got a very special guest, someone who we had in Season 2, is joining us back again in Season 3 to have a really compelling discussion about the mental health issue that we have right across the country. And I think it's fair to say that we've always been big on providing a great space for that narrative to continue in a really positive way. And we can't think of anyone better to bring back to the microphone in this space than someone who is known for his mental health advocacy, someone who is educating corporations both here within Australia, right across the globe, and is doing it in one-on-one space to multiple audience spaces as well. He is someone who we really value here. It's with great joy that we welcome back to the microphone for this particular Season 3, Nick Bracks. Nick, thank you so much, mate, for making yourself available during what is a very busy time for you.
No, thanks for having me back. And yeah, enjoyed chatting to you guys last time and love what you're doing. And appreciate you asking me to come and have this conversation.
Thanks, Nick. It is an absolute pleasure to have you back to talk about what is often a really heavy subject. And the stuff I've watched of yours and listened to of yours, I've just really resonated with the way you get your point across and your understanding of the topic. So I think the viewers, listeners and viewers will get a great deal out of today's chat. First of all, let's have a look at some of the observations wherein, particularly in certain parts of Australia and many parts of the world as well, there's a little thing called lockdown, where some people are finding it incredibly hard to deal with, and it's quite confronting in certain circles and so forth. So from your observations and what you're hearing, seeing, and what people are coming to you for at the moment, can you talk to us a little bit about, what people are going through in times like this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think we all know how difficult it is for everyone across the board. In Melbourne at the moment, it's pretty intense with the lockdowns and how long we've been locked away. And I think the main thing is people are starting to find it difficult with that sort of lack of certainty long term. I think at the beginning, when, even though it was a confronting thing and it was pretty intense what we all had to do, people thought, okay, but if I do this for a period, then, there's this end goal, it's going to get better pretty soon. Now it's ongoing and we don't know, maybe there'll be a vaccine soon, maybe it'll be better. Maybe there'll be an end to this by mid next year or the end of next year, or who knows. So I think that's the next part where people need to learn to just, how do I find and navigate a quality of life with all of the uncertainty and without knowing, when there's going to be an end point. And I think that's a lesson that, is so important to learn, COVID or not COVID, because that's life. If we didn't have COVID, there's uncertainty. We can't control much. And what I hope happens is it is through such a intense experience, people are forced to then look at themselves, look at these behavior patterns that aren't conducive to positive results and change them. And if you can change them and adapt and, make the most of a situation like this, then you're developing skills that when this finishes, you're going to be so well placed for whatever life throws at you. And I think there'll be a portion of people that happens for, but then there will also probably be a portion that suffer through it and try and avoid and, don't make that change. So I think it's varied, but I hope that people are able to, really try and use the time to make those changes and, having this chance to talk to you guys and get this message out to your audience. And I think as many if we could all be trying to get these messages out there, it's such an important thing to try and just educate people about what we can do.
And we really should make sure that if anyone is watching or listening at the moment and you are struggling with your mental health, or you know someone who is, that a great resource is Lifeline 13 11 14. That's 131114 13 11 14. Make sure that you take advantage of that service. And Lifeline, I think, during this period of the pandemic, have also added an SMS situation, because their own sort of algorithms and mental tracking of this thing has found that most people feel more comfortable maybe not having a conversation until they've at least broken through with a text message late at night. And so, there are some great resources there. If someone could actually suggest that they're not going so well with their emotional well-being, they are struggling with the terminology of isolation, which, they feel like is their natural day anyway, and they had the opportunity to pick up the phone and speak to you, take us through some of the strategies, if you will, that you might sort of suggest to somebody. And I guess it's case by case and individual by individual, but having the benefit of dealing with it yourself personally, and like all great leaders and all great coaches, you're someone who's taking people through a journey that you actually have been through, as opposed to being a travel agent. You're a tour guide. You've actually been through it, found light at the end of the darkness. What would you be sort of suggesting would be some great strategies that people could be using to help them with their emotional well-being in these challenging times?
Yeah, and first of all, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not I don't have a qualification in this area. And if someone is suffering, like you said, Lifeline, the one thing I always say is the one thing you shouldn't do is do nothing. So if you don't know where to go, literally just go onto Google, type in free mental health helpline, and things will come up and you can get help. But speaking from my experience, and, I think in simple terms, the thing that I think is most important would be routine and daily habits. And I say all the time, this stuff sounds common sense. It sounds simple. It's logical, and it's because it is. But we neglect these things because we get overwhelmed and things come up. And I think if we don't have that routine and identify things that help us on a daily basis, we can easily fall, prey to all of the other difficulties that are happening. So I'd say make sure that, you're getting up at a similar time, going to bed at a similar time, really being specific about when you do and don't work. Identify what are things that make me feel good. For me, it's exercise, meditation, talking to friends. Find those things, but don't just find and identify them. Don't just do them when you're feeling bad. Find how can I, in a sustainable way, do this stuff daily. And, around my routine, it's different for everyone. It might be maybe just going for even a 15-minute walk every day. Whatever it is, it can be different for everyone, but really identify and make sure you do those things. And then the other part that I'd say that I think is critical, again, COVID or not COVID, but critical right now, is being disciplined and controlling, what you consume, what content you consume, because we've got 24/7 access to just everything, fake news, real news, stuff that aggravates us, there's just stuff everywhere, and it's addictive. And if you don't control it, if you don't make, really be aware of it and be disciplined with it, we get caught in that vortex, and it's incredibly unhealthy. So I'd say be really, really rigid about trying to manage that. And that's probably one of the hardest things. I mean, I struggle still with it. I'm aware of it. I'm advocating for it, but I get caught, when I'm like stressed, I'll be on Instagram, you're scrolling through. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I'm looking at all this crap that is not having any positive outcome on anything. I'm like, but then you keep doing it because it's like, it's turning your mind off. So find a more, positive way to turn your mind off.
It's a bit like if you don't want to slip over, don't hang out in slippery spots, really, isn't it? And I think that's why
exactly.
I've got a lot of real positiveness from just deleting some of the apps on your phone for a period of time. I know if I told people to delete their Facebook or Insta or LinkedIn, whatever, I think they'd freak out if it was for any extended period of time. But even just a weekend or 2 or 3 days in a row of just doing it, and then I love what you're saying. Just monitor what makes you feel good.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know if you guys saw the Social Dilemma documentary. I watched it
Yes.
I felt sick after watching that. It's I mean, I think anyone listening to this should watch it because it's pretty compelling. It's not the most uplifting thing, but it is, I think there can be positives that come out of that, and we need to be changing these things. But, they're talking in that about, like what you just said there with social media, with using these things, looking at it like junk food. If we're going to just load our, pantry with crap, and stay in the house all day, we're probably going to end up eating it. So we've got to limit what we're exposed to. And so it's the exact same thing. It's, junk food for your mind. So we need to really, on a very, very conscious level, understand that, because, we don't at the moment. We just accept it as part of the norm, and, this must be fine to do because everyone does it.
Nick, most of the people who will be watching this or listening to this are very much similar-minded people. That's how they found this podcast, and they're people that are genuinely good intent, great ideas at wanting to sort of advance themselves and others. The number one feedback I get in this area, when we interviewed you last year and Wayne Schwass as well, and just speaking with Schwatter earlier this month, he was talking about the fact that one of the things he had to do was take himself off Instagram because he had something like 24,000 followers, but he was just finding that it was just not serving him to either be on it or to watch and view what's on it. The people that give me the overwhelming feedback say this: I actually didn't realise that someone who I loved, knew, or was in my network was actually struggling with mental health. They didn't show me any signs and I didn't know. And to some people, when they find out, they're a little bit shocked and they don't know how to respond. They actually just say, I just don't even know how to have a conversation with these people. And I, like you, say straight away, well, look, I'm not a psychologist, but I think you've got to have the narrative. You've got to have the talk. You've got to have the discussion and let them know that you don't have all the answers, but you are prepared to listen. And sometimes listening is just the best thing we could do. What would you say to somebody who says, I've got a good heart, good intent, didn't realise, don't have an understanding of it, haven't gone through it myself, but I do care for this person, so I want to engage with them. How would you say that they should best approach that, knowing that they've got some hesitancy on their own part of doing that?
Yeah, similar to what you said. I think just listening, being a good listener, letting people know that you're there you're there for them, and you're there to listen, and they can talk to you about anything. And I guess always cultivating, that environment in, whether you are trying to help someone or not, just trying to be a leader in that sense of, I'm going to show that, if I'm having a problem, I'm going to vocalize it, and it's okay to do that. And there's nothing, normalizing that. And then when you are dealing with a friend who is having an issue, letting them know I'm here, listen to them. I not being forceful. If you try and push someone to do something and say, you have to do this is, it'll actually have an adverse reaction, or normally will, and they'll retract it. So it's sort of understanding that you can't make anyone do anything, but letting them know you're there for them. And just, helping them understand that, they're not going to be judged. It's okay. It's like really saying, I broke my arm. I need to go to the hospital, get it put in plaster. I'm not going to be uncomfortable telling someone about that, or asking for help with that, or telling people what happened. But if I've got a problem in my mind and I need to go and talk to someone, if I need to talk to a psychologist, if I need to get help, it's no different. It's part of the human experience that we're going to have these things happen.
I think that's the difference, though, isn't it, that Pete, that, if I did see you with your arm in a plaster cast, I'm going to go, oh, mate, did you break your arm? Are you okay? Is everything all right? I'd have the discussion with you, as natural as that. But you don't come and see me with a plaster cast between your left and right ear, because that's just something that we tend to hide, because I don't know if stigma is the right word, Pete, but I think there's a bit of a negativity attached to putting up your hand as a male specifically, someone who identifies themselves with being a successful male and, having all the answers, to being sort of, I don't have all the answers and I'm finding myself in a bad space. I'm struggling with the concept. And so it's just a real interesting way to hear Nick sort of phrase it that way about the plaster cast. It's a bit of a telltale, but it's so simple that if you did see someone with a broken arm, you'd say, oh, you broke your arm. I'm talking to you about it. You wouldn't judge them on it. You wouldn't say, what the hell were you doing there? You just have the discussion, wouldn't you?
I think it's true what you said about stigma. I think there absolutely is a stigma, and it's amazing how prevalent and it is in society, and how well known it is, and it actually is spoken about a lot. But I'm just finding that we're probably not getting the necessary cut through we need to, and I don't know what it is, Nick, and I'd love you to speak to this, but I think that there's awareness. I think people are having more conversations about it, but I still can't see it getting the attention that it actually needs and deserves, and the conversations that really need to happen. So whether they're the quality of conversations, whether they're just, I've asked the question now. Okay, I'll quickly move on. I don't really want to listen to the answer, but I'll ask. It's a bit like the "Are you okay?" day. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm good. Okay, great. As opposed to, are you okay? Look, talk to me about, what are some of the feelings that you're actually going through during these times, and COVID lockdown times have been confronting, and a lot of people are finding a lot of things about themselves, and you know what? Some of them aren't all great, and that's okay, because these are very different times that we're in, and these are times that that most haven't dealt with before. So the concerning thing are for those who are, and my big thing with the government is, what about these people that live alone? What about these people that, connections are so important? Like you said before, and we've spoken about it time and time again, it's amazing how you feel when you get something off your chest. It's amazing how you feel when you have a real conversation with someone. Grab a cup of tea, grab a cup of coffee, and you sit down and have a chat. That's when most people feel at their best. So that's why it's really important. But again, I'd love you to just sort of speak to, do you think, am I off on a tangent here? Do you think that there is actually a real rate of knots in terms of this awareness and overcoming? Or do you think that at the moment it's just, does it sort of sometimes feel like we're going a little bit around in circles?
I think you're definitely not on a tangent. I think it is amazing that there's more awareness about it, and in the last 10 years it's become more and more. I completely agree. Things like "Are You Okay?" Day, it's like good initiative and great that people get on board, and for that day, us. But that's, again, just, it's really at the core of it, it's just raising a bit of awareness so people know this exists. But really, for these proper changes to happen, it's a cultural shift. And I think, the government play a huge part in not doing enough about it. A lot of it's platitudes. It's saying, yep, we acknowledge it, let's chuck some money at this thing, let's do that. Yep, that ticks that box. It's not as simple as that. It's not just about money. It's like, we're not taught, which I think it's insanity that it's not embedded in, the educational curriculum, that in primary school, high school, university, organisations, we're not taught about emotional well-being. We're not actually taught how to have self-awareness, how to have self-love, how to understand ourselves, how to communicate, how to have healthy relationships, how to self-care, all these essential things that I think they're, it's the number one life skill that everyone needs. And the only way we've really been able to learn this is through trial and error, or through severe suffering to the point where you're in so much pain, and if you don't make a change, something really bad's going to happen. So it needs at a very core level to change. And I think that's a long, long way off. And even seeing at the moment, not that I'm having a go at the government, there's so many things to deal with, but seeing how it's dealt with, it's sort of, it's this niggling thing on the side that, okay, yeah, great, would love to address it more, would love to put more resource, do more about it, but we've got too many other things to deal with. So, it sort of sits there. I'm not saying I have the solution to that, but I think the long-term solution's preventative, and, really it's not about some awareness and this and that. It's about this becomes just part of our culture, and part of how we're educated.
Yeah, can I just say something quickly on that? And this might be quite confronting to make this sort of comment, but I think if I was the Premier right now and I locked everyone up and the numbers came down in COVID, I think anyone could do that. There's no doubt about it. So what we're looking for is a way out, right? In terms of the government, what we're looking for is a way out, navigate our way out, which minimises the hurt of so many people, right? Because locking people up and the numbers go down, well, of course they're going to go down. If no one's seen each other, that's just, So if we look at mental health, it's a bit like, sometimes it's like throw a pill at it. Throw some prescription drugs at it, and that's it. But what you're going to do is then just dull society, aren't you? Mm-hmm. So I love talking about these ways you can do it, and obviously there's going to be clinical imbalances and so forth. And again, not an expert on it, but people know what makes them feel good. and by talking and doing lifestyle changes, that's gonna do a very, very that's going to go a long way in I think in helping things along.
Yeah, and I think the other thing there, Nick, is that one of the things that you're big on, I know Wayne Schwass is big on, I know Pete and I are very big on it, is we have to change the narrative from mental health, which has the stigma, to emotional well-being, which says, well, what does that look like? And I think you touched on a really valid point there, Nick. It is far better that we educate children, produce strong, self-esteemed, understanding, in touch with their emotions children at the beginning than it is to repair broken adults at the end. And it seems to me like we just get to this end scenario and say, we're going to put people in lockdown. We know it's going to be a challenge. They've actually acknowledged it's going to cause some issues by throwing so much money at this, extra mental health, as they call it, resources going forward. Mm-hmm. Well, doesn't that just kind of confirm what Pete was saying earlier, Nick, about the fact that, the numbers are coming down because we've locked people down? Well, even a broken clock or a broken watch is right twice a day. The plan was probably broken, but they're getting the outcome that they wanted. But at what cost is that actually happening in the amount of people who are listening to social distancing? Means something to me, but to someone who's not doing so well with their emotional well-being, they're already struggling, and now they're being told they have to even distance themselves further from contact. For goodness sake, the narrative is so poor that we don't allow the environment for people to get sort of, A, to put their hand up, and B, to get a contact going. And I know one of the things that you're big into is listening without judgment, listening to be there, and then offering some sort of resource moving forward. So I think Pete's point is very valid. I think your understanding there about educating, from a young age at school, we get taught so many things, but we don't get taught how to deal with our emotions and emotional intelligence and things of that nature. So I think Pete's point is so valid.
Ricky, can I just break in there for a second, and just because it's interesting, just looking back at our conversation with Schwatter, and the terminology used, the mental health versus emotional well-being. And I think linguistically, it's amazing how words can have certain meaning. And, I just think of growing up, and use the word mental health, and you think, oh, you're mental, or you're loopy, or whatever it may be. I just think growing up, in the 80s, there was a very much a stigma. You would know the 80s, Nick, but anyway, they were good times. Rick used to have long hair. Anyway,
I actually had hair. I had hair, not long hair.
But the stigma, and that's where instantly you say mental health, and I don't know about what the listeners feel, or if you hear that word mental health. But if you hear the word emotional well-being, maybe linguistically that's where we need to move it more so, because instantly it's a softer. And you look at this well-being, and everyone loves the well-being. Everyone loves the retreats and so forth, and got to go and work on my well-being and the health and all that sort of stuff. Maybe linguistically that's where we might have it wrong with this whole mental health sort of stigma and words that are put around it.
Yeah, I think that's a big part. I think, definitely. I think the words that are put around it, I think, I was thinking when you were talking before as well about, people that are suffering during this period. Another thing that I think is really bad is like people that are already prone to a mental health issue that are suffering. And then when you do speak up about it, often what the narrative can be now is, oh yeah, but we're all struggling, you got to suck it up and get through this. And it's like, no, this person needs help. Then they start feeling guilty. Oh, I shouldn't speak up because everyone's suffering. So that's really selfish of me to be suffering while we've got to do this thing for the greater good. And it's like, again, comes down to that balance of how do we find the middle ground where we can properly support these people. But I still think, the big thing really is it's a cultural thing, and it's, you can't just keep throwing money at stuff and hope, you got to have reactive services, of course, but I think if we had society developed to a point where you were internally able to feed yourself rather than needing stuff externally all the time, you're equipped to handle anything. It might not be ideal. I know for me, and I'm definitely got a long way to go in my own, personal growth, but I've worked on myself a lot, and I've got things that, the core things that drive me is stuff that I can feed myself. I don't need permission. I don't need external validation for it. I don't need, I can do it daily just from anywhere. So then it's not ideal being locked away, but you can feed yourself that. And if everyone had done that kind of work, then we can deal with the pandemic a lot better, because we're not going to be desperately needing all of the stimulus that we get from constantly going out, seeing friends, drinking, getting reward for whatever our job is, just this never-ending thing of needing to distract ourselves. And it again goes back to that education, and I feel like there's this black and white thing that we just label everyone as this or that, and don't have an understanding of maybe someone's behaving in that way because all of these other things happen, and fundamentally everyone is, almost everyone has good intentions and are good at heart, but people can act out because they're in pain and things have happened. And anyway, it's like probably have to do another episode on talking about all those things.
But I think what you're saying there, Nick, is, mental health is not a nail and the solution isn't a hammer and you just bang away. It's got to be more strategic than that. It's got to be more nuanced than just, we'll throw some money at it and make it look like we're doing something about it without really doing much at all about it. If we woke up and heard overnight that 8 people had lost their lives on the roads, we'd be all in an uproar. Yet we never hear, and I hear every day the COVID numbers, stats, and I've detuned from it because I just don't want to hear it anymore, and I don't want to hear a premier say best wishes go to those families that have just lost loved ones. I mean, for goodness sake. But imagine if we woke up every day to how many people took their own lives. It's a family that's woken up without a father or a mother or a brother or a sister or an auntie or an uncle or a grandparent. The list goes on. So I think what we need to do is we need to change the narrative. Clearly what you're trying to do as one conversation at a time. You do it through your speaking, which you do in big corporations and in smaller organisations as well. You do it on a podcast now, which is just going gangbusters. Where can people sort of access that sort of information from? I know your own site's got some great resources there as well, but maybe give some people who are keen to explore this a little bit further, who do want to know more about how to, and they may be struggling with it themselves personally and don't feel yet the ability to speak to a stranger, but maybe feel like they've got an association with you through this particular podcast today. What are some of the ways that people can interact with you on this very important topic?
Probably the easiest way, they can just go to my website, nickbracks.com. On there, we've actually got video-based programs. One of them is called Mental Health Masterclass, and you can access that through it. We've also got free content on there. If you sign up to the website, you get sent a whole lot of free PDFs and just, tip sheets and things like that. The main thing I'm pushing at the moment is, as you mentioned, a podcast that I launched about 2 months ago called Move Your Mind with Nick Bracks. So if you go onto my website, or if you go to nickbracks.com/moveyourmind, it'll come up, and we're just interviewing a range of different celebrities and wellness experts, doctors, to just have really, raw and honest conversations about their personal stories, what they've been through, and then learning from these experts about, how can we learn about different areas such as sleep, nutrition, fitness, etc. So, I'd love you guys to check out that out. It's completely free, and, it's out there to listen to.
And we'll make sure that those particular links are on this particular interview that we're doing with Nick Bracks, our very special guest who has come back on to our podcast just to share some information, some strategies. Again, if you want to review back to Nick's earlier conversation on this podcast from season 2, that was episode 33 that we keep on referencing when we had him on last time. And when you've heard Peter and myself reference Wayne Schwass, who is a co-founder of Pucker Up, another emotional wellbeing organisation that's doing some amazing work out there. Schwatter's interview is episode 36. It's one of our most compelling, as was Nick's from last season. And, we just think, Pete, don't we, that this is a conversation that needs to be had. There's got to be a space for it to come forward without the stigma, without judgment, without sort of, some pre-frame that's suggesting that we're not doing so well. The most courageous conversation to have is one that says, I'm not doing so well and I need to just talk to somebody about it. I think that's real courage. Real courage is not hiding it from others. Real courage is not trying to deal with it yourself. I don't know a more mentally tougher individual than Wayne Schwass, who's played football at the highest level, and yet he, who thought he could do it himself, needed the help of others. And I think it's only when we engage with others, and for Nick to have those resources available on his website, and as someone who, at the same time, Nick, you were thinking the answer to your challenge was to just train harder and work faster and run harder and all those sorts of things, when realistically what you needed was some strategies that can help you get better at what you do, and routine sets you free, and you shared that with us today. And Pete, I just think we need to almost make Nick a bit of a regular, to be brutally honest, because I just think this is such an important topic that ain't going to go away anytime soon.
No, it's such a great idea, and it's a topic that we are certainly not going to shy away from, and haven't shied away from, and we will continue to have and spread the message, because it's people like Nick and Wayne who are doing such incredible jobs, and many other really great practitioners out there that are doing some incredible stuff. So it's a journey that we're all on together. And dare I say that we're all in this together line, but we really are in terms of this emotional well-being, and just looking at our lifestyle choices and what we do and the conversations that need to happen. I mean, as human beings, connection is so important, and and I think that's what a lot of people have been lacking at the moment. So it's going to be very prevalent right now, and the spotlight's well and truly on many at the moment, and showing up the sort of the chinks, if you like, in that armour. So we want to be there for those people as well, and hence why someone like a Nick is such a fabulous resource for so many people. So really appreciate it, Nick. Just a quick one, being and for those who know the Bracks name, and certainly part of
hang on, don't go getting in political now.
No. I was just purely going to say it must be and looking at what your dad went through as a premier and so forth, it must be pretty stressful times in the whole political arena right now. And did you want to make any? I'd love to sort of get your quick view on what it must be like in terms of the whole political arena right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually, because I've been living in Vancouver, so I've come back and I'm living with mum and dad while I'm back here during this period. So I've been able to, spend a lot of time with them. And probably the main thing is it's good. Probably, I think Dad's thankful and we're thankful he's not premier during this period. It wouldn't be, it's a tough thing. And I guess whether, you agree or disagree with what Dan Andrews is doing or any other politician, I mean, it's a pretty full-on, position to be in. And, they need to be looking after their own mental health, these politicians, where they're getting drilled 24/7. It's like they're human. I think people forget that a politician is just like any of us. They're just doing a job. They don't have all the answers. They're doing their best with the team around them and to their knowledge and for what they think is the right thing to do. But we also need to remember they're human. These people aren't bulletproof. They need to look after themselves. And so it's a crazy time, but I don't know. I think there's no right or wrong way to deal with this, I guess, because it's never been done and people are learning as they go. And I think it's probably a good thing to not be, not have to be there. Yeah.
Well, I think the other thing is, and you summed it up really well there, Nick, there's no COVID playbook, is there? It's not like any leader on any organisation, whether they be a leader of a state, a leader of a country, a leader of an organisation or a leader of a family. There's no way they can just pull off on the bookshelf behind them, here's the COVID playbook, this is how you go. I think people do the best job they can with the resources that they've got. And I think one of the most important resources we can have at the moment is access to world-class mental health, emotional wellbeing opportunities like the one we'd like to think we've just brought to you today. Again, we stress if you've got any challenges with your own emotional wellbeing or someone you know and love, 13 11 14, that's Lifeline, 13 11 14. There is also an SMS option there if people don't feel comfortable to speak to a human being but feel like they could have a conversation. If it starts with your thumbs and fixes up your brain, we'll be very happy with that conversation going that way. But most importantly, Nick has shared a fair whack of his time. He's up at ungodly hours because he is still on that sort of the Northern Hemisphere time frame. And I know he's been up sometimes at 2:30, 3 a.m. in the morning doing what he's doing. I'm not going to ask you how the latest auditions have been going or anything like that, mate, because I don't want to sort of put you under the pump in that respect. But Nick Bracks is somebody who I'm sure if you researched his particular life journey, you'll hear here and see here. This is an individual that has, gone through his own challenge, still like all of us, still finding the best version of himself through it. He shared with us today that routine sets him free. He sets up what fills up his cup and he pours it daily. He understands what's required to keep him balanced and keep him going. But I think most importantly, one of the things I know from personal experience and have seen in all of his other work, he is very, very, very passionate about other people and helping other people find a better version of themselves. My message to all leaders watching this is to really check in with your people, go past the program answers, not how you're doing and then leave it at that. And as Pete said later, just move on. No, how are you really doing? Just to make sure that if there is a chance for you to just listen without judgment, if there is a chance for you to add to their self-esteem and add to their positive expectancy about going forward and offer hope, that's a conversation that's compelling. It's a conversation that's courageous. It's a conversation we need to have. And, we're not trying to change the world with this podcast. We're just trying to change the worlds of those that are actually watching and listening and being a part of it. And if we can do that one conversation at a time, then Pete, I think we've done well. I'll leave you to wrap up and thank our guest as we have taken up so much of his time right now.
Oh, Nick, it's been a wonderful conversation to have on such a confronting topic for so many, and just to hear your thoughts and to share, some of your experience and so forth. It's an absolute pleasure to speak to you, and again, thank you for giving up your time to share those thoughts and directions with our listeners and viewers as well. So from us here at Voices of Value, all the best with your new podcast. Hopefully you'll get a few more listeners. It'll bounce from here to there, and no doubt, mate, with the sort of work that you're doing and the sort of person you are, there's only further great things ahead for you. There's no doubt about that.
No, thank you for having me back on. I've really enjoyed chatting to you guys again, and love what you're both doing with this and all the other work. So yeah, thank you, and hope to come on again at some point in the future.
Oh, we're going to make you a regular, my friend, especially if Collingwood salutes later in the year, as we all hope. But don't worry about who Pete Parish will have been asking.
We all hope, do we? Okay.
Yeah, well, that's true.
It's looking a bit better for Geelong than Collingwood, mate. At the moment.
Yeah.
Missed this banter. I've missed this banter.
Yeah. Home and away and finals. I think you've got to actually draw the distinction, Nick. There's no point being sort of at the top of the table or thereabouts during the you need to be there at the pointy end is all I'm going to say. And you've got to time your run, Pete. You've got to time your run. Right. But in all seriousness, again, we want to thank Nick Bracks, our very special guest. We want you to make sure that you do check out his resources on his website, nickbracks.com. We'll have the links, as I say. Again, we want to make sure that if this is a value-added conversation for you, that you add value to your friends, your networks, and make sure you share it with them. This has been Rik Rushton with our very, very special guest, Nick Bracks, and my good mate, Peter Kakos, saying thank you again for listening and watching. We look forward to continuing the conversation on our next episode.
We trust you enjoyed this episode of Voices of Value, a shared conversation between Rik Rushton and Peter Kakos and their valued guests. Their views are not necessarily those of the wider world, but they should be. You can subscribe through your favourite podcast provider to ensure you never miss an episode. And as always, we welcome your feedback, ratings and reviews of the content we provide. Additional information can be sourced from our website, voicesofvaluepodcast.com. We look forward to you joining the conversation again next week, when Rik and Peter continue the search for truth, justice and the value-added way.